Like I said, I am Kristen Garlitz with EdTech. This is Google Docs Plus. At this point in the school year, I am sure many of us have already been using Google Docs to create a lot of our assignments. I'm hoping that we have at least a little bit of knowledge about Google Docs. That's going to make this a lot easier. And then I'm hoping to help you take your assignments to the next level. All right. I put into the chat a PDF of the slide deck that we're going to go through. Even though it's in a PDF format, all of the links are clickable. So you should be able to open up everything that I go over. Google Docs Plus. So I'm hoping to get more out of your assignments for you and your students, make them easier to grade, and make it easier on you as a teacher. Things like using tables, hyperlinks, graphics, color coding, organization, all of these things can make it easier for you and your students. So we'll start with some teacher organization tips. One tip is that you can actually go to your preferences and set your preferences. If you've got certain words or phrases that you type out a lot, you can actually go into your preferences and make those things happen automatically for you. You know how if you type the word wrong and it auto-corrects it for you? That's actually in your preferences. Or how if you type the C with parentheses, it turns into the copyright symbol. You can actually set custom ones. So you go to your tools, which is right here at the top of your Google Doc. Then you click on preferences, and then you can set automatic substitutions. I would be careful showing students how to do this, because although it is good for them to spell the word there, and there correctly, and definitely, defiantly, oftentimes they'll try to write the word definitely, but it autocorrects to defiantly. I have had students prank each other, go into each other's computers, and set the preferences to change words to something inappropriate. So just be careful if you show students how to set their preferences. It can be helpful, but you know how students are. Use keyboard shortcuts. Anytime you are in a Google Doc slide deck, anything, you can use your keyboard shortcuts to move through things quicker instead of clicking on stuff. So for example, I'm just going to open up one of my docs I have for today's training. If I wanted to go into my edit file, I can see here that, oops, there we go. Copy is Control-C or Command-C. Cut is Command-X. Paste is Command-V. So instead of doing right-click, copy, right-click, paste, I highlight what I want, and then I do Command-C, Command-V. So those keyboard shortcuts can really speed things along when you're trying to make documents and assignments as quickly as possible. You can use voice typing. If you wanted to dictate your notes because you're faster at speaking than typing, if you have lectures that you wanted to record, you could actually use voice typing on a doc to type out that transcript of your lecture. If you didn't have a version of your short story to share with your students because it's on a PDF and it's not copying correctly, you could actually read the short story out loud using the voice typing, and Docs will type it out for you. So that might be a way to save some time creating your assignments. To get to voice typing, you go to your document, you go to Tools, and then you go down here to voice typing. And then you just click on it, and it starts typing everything you say, just like your phone does. So that's a really great way to type quickly. That's a great thing to teach students also, for students who have mobility issues, and you want them to type out their essay or narrative or notes or whatever, you can have them use voice typing as well. You can change folder locations from the doc. I know that when I get to creating a whole lot of documents, and then I go look at my drive, I'm like, oh my gosh, my drive is a mess. Everything's just everywhere. So when you're at the top of your doc, you just click on that little folder button, and you can actually organize it from here. So for me, that's easier than trying to go to my drive, right-click on it, moving it there. You just click on the little folder, and then you can move it from folder to folder, And you can actually, let me show you, move it from your personal drive to a shared drive or back. So if you've got a shared drive with your department or your school, you can move documents from your personal drive to your shared drive.
Kristen, does it only show the folder when you have a title in the doc?
No, but it only shows the folder if you're the owner of the document. So if, let's say you have it in your shared drive and somebody else created it, you won't be able to move it because you're not the owner of the document. So sometimes I'll go to move stuff and I'm like, oh, I don't actually own that. So in that case, you would go to File, Make a Copy, and then make a copy of it so it's your own copy, or go to Share and share it with yourself so that you are also an owner of it. So those are some different ways that you can make sure that you have ownership of the doc in order to get that little folder symbol up here in order to move it from folder to folder. That was a good question. And please feel free to interrupt me or type it into the chat. I've got the chat open on my other computer, so hopefully I can catch some of your questions. At the end of the training, I will be sharing a question form and a feedback form and a training request form. So we'll have lots of different ways to answer your questions if you've got them. So that's some organization tips. When you're creating docs, we have a template library that there's actually one for APS, and there's one that's general for all Google that everybody has access to. These templates are actually really good. There's a lot of creative ones out there that are ready to go, and then all you have to do is type in or fill in your information. I used to have a class, English class, where I taught students how to create their own resumes. And there's a resume template. So then all they have to do is fill in their name and address and all their jobs that they've had. Boom, easy resume ready to go. To get to the template gallery, when you're on a doc or on your doc's homepage, you go to File, New, and then you can go to From Template. When you open up any of these templates, they pop up, they look just like they do in the picture with, usually there's filler text. So you just have to teach students, if you're gonna use them, to replace the filler text with real stuff. So there's even reports for MLA and APA. There's book reports. I mean, there's so many good choices here for teachers and for students. If you wanted to teach your students how to do a resume or a letter, a business letter, that's a really great skill. If you wanted to do a quick recommendation letter, students are always asking for recommendation letters. You've got your format right here ready to go. You can add a table of contents. If you've got a lot of notes that you're providing for students, Google has a tool to create a table of contents to make it quicker to navigate. It's actually pretty easy to use. We use them for our training documents. This is our Pear Deck documentation that is available for all teachers to use if you would like to learn about the new Pear Deck. To do it, all you do at the beginning of your document is you click on Insert, then you go down to Table of Contents, and then you can choose how you want it to look with page numbers or with blue hyperlinks. Then a box will pop up here at the beginning. It will be blank. This doesn't fill in automatically. What you have to do then is throughout your document, use the header text. So normally this box says normal right here under styles. You're going to highlight the text that you want to be included in your table of contents, and then you choose which style of heading you want. So the bigger it is on here, the bigger it's going to be on your document. So for our training documents, we use heading 2 for the subheadings here, and then heading 3 for the even smaller ones down below. So once you've got, and you don't even have to use a table. We just like to use tables for our training documents. You could just write out your notes and then use this styles button here to do subtitles. So if you're copying and pasting over from your textbook, for example, and then you just go back and highlight the subheadings from the textbook and use this heading style. Then once this little box up here shows up, you just click this little arrow and it refreshes and updates the table of contents. I like the blue hyperlink one because now every single thing in my training here is hyperlinked. So all that you need to know, or students, if this was a document for students, is that, oh, I want to learn about Flashcard Factory on Pear Deck, and then I click there and it takes me all the way to the bottom of the document where Flashcard Factory is. So using a table of contents is a really easy way to organize your docs. The other nice thing about docs is that unlike a physical book, you can update this at any time. So if you add more information to your notes, if you had running notes throughout the school year, you could have that table of contents and then just keep adding notes. And then every time you add new notes, update the table of contents. And then students have a running list of everything you've covered from the school year. No excuses for leaving their textbook at home when you've got a document of all of their notes linked to Google Classroom. Another quick tip for organization is using the Find and Replace button. You can use Control F or Command F to find a word quickly in a document. So let's say, I don't know, students make spelling mistakes all the time. Maybe they forgot to capitalize a name. You do Command F or Control F, then this little tiny box pops up in the top corner. For students, I would have them uppercase their I's because they would always forget to do capital I's when they write stories. Let's just see how many times I use the word pear. I use the word pear 70 times in this document. And so as I go through them, I can see every single time that word has been used. So this find button is really helpful to find, maybe if you wanted to look for vocabulary words that they used in a text, if you wanted to look to see how many times you used an individual word. This Control F or Command F find button works in docs, slideshows, spreadsheets. It works in all three of those Google tools. Then if you wanted to replace it, you click on the three little dots there, and now you can actually replace it. So maybe I forgot to uppercase it, and so I want to uppercase it every time, and I want to match case. So that's one way you can replace it. Maybe you have students who are writing short stories and they want to change the character's name. So they can find every single time they use the word Joe and replace it with the name James. When I'm writing letters of recommendations, sometimes I reuse letters of recommendation, and so I'll go through and find and replace all of the names to make sure the letter of recommendation fits with the new student. I'm not going to replace that right now, but that's another quick way to get the most out of your Google Docs. And then images. Images is a great way to make your documents pop, give them a little life, give students something that they can look at while they're doing their work. You can actually edit images right in the doc. So let's see here. It's taken me to the Google Home. I think I had one. All right, so this is using Google Drawings. So I'm just going to go to a great tool that's included in all Google tools is that when you go to Insert Image, you can, of course, upload from your computer if you've got something saved or from your drive, but you can actually search the web straight from here. This is good to teach your students too because all of these are free use, so you don't have to worry about copyright. So let's say I wanted to find a picture of, just to show you, it's not perfect because if I'm writing a narrative about Of Mice and Men, it's showing me the band of mice and men, not the book. So that's unfortunate. So there's fewer choices for some stuff that is heavily copyrighted. If you look up Disney, there's like no Disney. But at least you're sure that it's free and fair use and your students aren't going to get in trouble. So I'm just going to insert that picture. Then always teach your students, because this is a pet peeve of mine, click and drag from the corner to resize, not one of the sides, because then it screws up the aspect ratio. I always tell my students that. You can then have it go in line with your text, wrap with your text, which is nice, so that you can move it, or break text. So then that would actually allow you to move it freely on the page. Sometimes it goes a little wonky. So right now it's completely off the page. Nobody wants that. But pictures are a nice way to make it more visual. If you double click on your pictures, you can crop it with the crop button. So that's helpful if you found something that was a little bit big. You can also click on the 3 little dots underneath the picture and then click on size and rotation and actually rotate it. Or you can click on adjustments, and then there's all sorts of tools over here. You can set the transparency if you want it to be transparent. You can set the brightness or the contrast. I would recommend doing these slowly because they do get kind of crazy. You can even recolor it. So if you wanted to make it nice and moody, there we go. Now it's a terrifying story. Okay, so those image options, those are all things that are integrated into the doc itself, and you don't need to have Photoshop or any special tools. This is great to teach students too, so that they can make it a little bit more fun. You can, let's see here. I know in slides, you can move it behind text. I think with docs, it's a little less. Let's see, let me fix the position on the page. It's not quite as user-friendly as if you're doing a slideshow. So like if you wanted students to do posters, I wouldn't recommend Google Docs. I would recommend slideshows or Google Drawings, which I'm going to show you here at the end, hopefully, if we have time for it. But I don't think you can put the picture behind the text. That's something that I believe is only available on slides and drawings. Okay. But you know, adding images to your documents is a great way to bring that content to life, to give them some real life examples. And I like to have students add pictures to their documents, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment, for that multimodal learning. A few more tips. I really like using tables. When I create worksheets for students, if I don't give them a box to write their answers into, who knows where they're going to write their work. So when you add those tables, it gives students a really clear place where they're supposed to write their answer. And then for me, it's easier to grade because I can see exactly where their answer is supposed to go. I like to use color coding a lot too. You can use color coding, different fonts, or even using emojis for different parts or steps. So this is an example. These are actually from Google Classroom, but if you use the same emojis every time, you can give students that visual cue about which step or which part they're supposed to be doing. It's that consistency that's really key to help students. If you color code for steps, you can have the boxes in the table be color coded or the font be color coded. Just make sure you've got high contrast so it's easy for students to see. You want light on dark or dark on light. You can hyperlink your notes, documents from your drive, links to the textbook, links to websites. You can have YouTube videos be linked. Anything that a student needs to complete the assignment, you can have it linked directly to the document. No excuses for I didn't know how to do the assignment when you have all of the documents linked right there. How do you get the emojis from Google Classroom? When you're creating your topic, you can only add them to the topic. You can't add them to the assignment. But when you're creating that topic on Google Classroom, you right-click in the box, and then there's that little emojis button. And then you can add the emoji to Classroom. So I personally would use the same emoji from Classroom as on my Docker assignment, just so visually students can see the similarities. All right, so here's some example assignments. I was an English teacher. A lot of these are going to be more heavily English-based, but I'll try to help you think of different ways that this could work. So this is a figurative language poem that I had my students write about the chapter we read. You could totally have students write poems about nonfiction pieces too. So they could write poems about a chapter from their history textbook or a nonfiction article they read about a scientist or something like that. It's great to get them to think in those different ways to really see what they're getting out of the learning. So I like to put the directions at the top. I've got a hyperlink here to a ToneWords website because students are terrible at coming up with tone words. And then I've got boxes down here where they actually write their response, and then color coding for what they need to put in their poem. So by including the color codes here, and then they color code their poem down here, I can visually see as a teacher where they used each of those things. So if they colored it red, they're telling me they think that's alliteration. And then I can decide, yes, that was alliteration. Good job, you get a point for that. Or no, you don't actually know what alliteration is. Students enjoy this too because it's pretty. It helps them visualize if they've completed all of the pieces of the assignment, because visually they can go through and see if I color coded everything. I've got a link to their figurative language notes here and a link to their commonly misused words so that they've got links to all of their documents that they need. Should they have taken the notes and put them in their notebooks? Of course. Are they going to pull those out when they need them for the assignment? No. So now they can just click on the link, and that's a lot quicker than rifling through their notebooks to find their notes. Even in this digital world, I am a fan of writing notes by hand. There is that fine motor skills that they're losing and that brain-hand connection. So handwriting some stuff is good. I like to do my rubrics on a table also. I had students do presentations, and I would actually have them color code on their presentation that they would show to the class. And then as they're giving their presentation, I would use this to say whether or not they did all of the things, because it's color coded on their presentation and it's color coded on my rubric. And now I can very quickly see if they did all of the pieces correctly on their presentation. So when we were back in real school, physical school, I would print this on a color printer. I was very lucky. My school had a color printer. I know we don't all. And then I would just circle it and go through as they completed the presentation. I would give the students this rubric ahead of time as they were creating their presentation so that they knew what was expected of them and they could make sure that they color coded it. Again, students really like this because they have a list of what needs to be accomplished. And they can see visually as they're going if they've completed each step. In this worksheet, this was a steal. This is a graphic organizer English teachers often use for characters, but you could totally do this for history or science also if you were learning about different scientists, different figures from history, you know, again, using that multimodal. Students would fill in their answers in the boxes here about what the character says, thinks, their effect on others, their actions, their looks. I would have them then find a picture using a Google image search that would represent the character. This was great because kids really enjoy finding pictures about the characters. It helps them think about characters in a different way. And then they would have to explain that connection, so it's taking their learning a little bit deeper. This is a soapstone. This is another type of worksheet. This works great with any nonfiction text or any fiction text. So if you read any sort of articles, a soapstone is a great worksheet to do. This was one that we did with group members, and I'm going to get into group work here in a little bit. But using docs is fantastic for group work because students can work together on the same document at the same time, and you can assign different pieces. All of these example assignments, there's a link at the bottom to view all of the assignments. So you can copy them and make your own based on these. Please feel free to steal these and assign them to your students. So that's a lot of different example docs. I'll take a break here for any questions. Do you guys have any questions? I know I didn't cover a whole lot of math here. If you're a math teacher and you think of an example, can you put it in the chat or of different ways that you can use tables to help students organize? Or if you have any other questions. Rosanna, are you talking about Google Drawings for the draw tool? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna get to Google Drawings at the end here, hopefully. Google Drawings is probably my favorite of all of the Google tools. So I definitely want to get to that. No other questions? All right, real quickly, I really like using docs for group work. Even in this weird environment where we're all working from home, it is totally possible to have students do collaborative assignments. I actually think docs and slides are even better for collaboration than using a physical piece of paper poster, because back in the olden days when we were in class, students would say, "Miss, I can't meet up with my partner after school, so our project will never get done." Now you can say, yes, you can. You all have access to the same Google Doc, so you can complete it on your own time during asynchronous time, and you can work together during class during asynchronous time. So I actually really like docs for group work better than a physical poster or a physical essay that they're working on together. So when you assign a doc for group work, think about your permissions. If you're assigning it on Classroom, you can assign it so that they all have editing access if you want your entire class working on the same one. You could, let's say you have a worksheet that you want them to fill out. You could make 5 copies of the worksheet and link all 5 on the assignment and make sure that they all have editing access and tell Group A to open the first assignment, Group B to open the second assignment. So I've done that before. It works really well. Since you have the ability to see who wrote what on a document, that usually stops students from messing with each other's work. So I've not had a whole lot of issues with allowing students to have edit access and students messing up other kids' work, because you just have to catch them one time for them to go, oh shoot, she can see everything I can do. If you are assigning a group document on Classroom, my suggestion is to have one student open the doc or start a new doc and then share it with the rest of the group members. And then that first student submits it on Classroom and everybody else just clicks submit blank. You can't have all the students turn in the exact same document, and you don't necessarily want them making copies because then it'll get confusing. So what I did was I would have them all write their name on the document. Student A would submit it, and then students B, C, D, E would all just submit blank. I would grade student A and then give everybody the grade on Classroom. So that's one way that you can have students do group work together in an easy way. You still can use rubrics, of course, for grading group work. Classroom has that integrated rubric that's really nice. And you can actually add rubrics to your assignments. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a minute. So here's an example of a non-fiction graphic organizer that you could assign to a group. Let's say you linked 5 of these or 6 of these, however many groups you want, to Classroom. And then you would tell your group members to write their names up here. This way you know who is in which group. And then they would write the title of the article, the author's name, their link, if you're letting them choose their own, the purpose of the article. And then these are great questions to ask about any nonfiction article. What are the facts? What are the opinions? What are the author's claims? Like, what are they trying to prove? And then what evidence do they have? So this is a great way to have them examine nonfiction articles from any content area. And these documents are also linked at the bottom so that you can view it and make your own copy if you would want that. This is a vocabulary graphic organizer. It's called the Freyer model. Again, all content areas have vocabulary. So if you have a document where you have one of these on each page or each slide of a slide deck, you can have student groups work on one vocabulary word at a time and go really in depth with just understanding this one word really well. And then they could come together on the Google Meet and present vocabulary words to the other groups, kind of like a jigsaw model. So you can actually use Google Meet and Docs together to do a jigsaw. And this type of graphic organizer is pretty easy for students to use also. It's also pretty easy to create on a doc or a slideshow, depending on what you would like. You can use the table for this. This one's actually on a Google Slides, but it works on both. Another way to think about doing group work and group documents is to have every student in class accessing the same document. I would often do this as a quick checkup or a quick, like an exit ticket or a quick homework assignment. So I would have students write just one response on the document. I would do a table so it was easy for organization and have them write their name next to their answer. You could have them use their ID number or a code, you know, something that's more anonymous if you've got issues with that. And then you can see in the revision history who answered which question. At my old school, I didn't really have issues with this. Again, they wouldn't erase each other's questions. Sometimes they would use weird fonts. So you would have to have a discussion with students about not changing the fonts. Once they've all answered it during their exit ticket time or during their homework time, you can then share your screen and actually discuss this together during synchronous time. So for example, this was a thematic statement document that I had created at my old school. And so for homework, every student had to find one quote about one of the thematic statements. So all they did was put their name, their quote, and then an explanation. Then the next day we got together and they were able to discuss why they wrote what they wrote. So individually, it's not that much work. Each kid only took maybe 10 minutes to do this homework assignment, but then all together we had an entire list of quotes that they could then pick about theme that they could then use on their theme essays. So this is a great way to get some more collaboration, to learn from each other. I would always tell them there are only so many spots. Once the spot's been taken, you can't fill it in. So the more popular themes would get picked first, if you can imagine a popular theme. But this is a great way to get students to think together and work together and learn from each other. The lower end students were able to view what other students did and then maybe not copy them, but learn from what they did and follow the same format. So this is helpful for your ELL and SE students. You could do the same thing with pictures and have them add a picture and make it very visual. So there's a lot of ways that you can use a document with multiple students at the same time. All right, some grading tips. I know that we all know how to use comments on Classroom by now, but a cool thing that you may or may not know about comments is that when you, let me actually open up this one since it's got more here. When you highlight something and you go to add your comment, you can actually click the @ sign to comment at people. And your most commonly used people will show up first. But if you wanted to, if you were on a group document, you could say, hey, Johnny, you forgot to finish this part of the assignment. Or, hey, Joe, you need to finish or rewrite your thesis statement here. So that @ means that they'll actually receive an email saying your teacher commented on your document. You can use the comment bank, of course, in Google Classroom. But as I'm sure you found by now, you can't use the comment bank on the private comments, that little box on the right-hand side. So what I like to do is type out a document with my commonly used comments and then just copy and paste it over to the private comment box instead of typing it out again and again and again. You can save all those to the comment bank, of course, but for whatever reason, Google won't let you use the comment bank on the private comment, only on this one here. Like I said, you can view the revision history when you've got multiple students viewing the same, editing the same document. That revision history can be really helpful. It's a good CYA with parents and administrators when you need to prove who did what or who didn't do what, or who was working on their assignment at midnight when they should have been sleeping. Like I tell my students, Google never lets you forget anything. They're a bad ex-girlfriend. You just click here on the version history. This is also helpful if a student accidentally deletes their whole assignment. You can go into the version history, pull up the one from before they deleted it, and then make that their new copy. So, you have those students that accidentally edit or accidentally delete it or on purpose delete somebody else's work. Nothing's ever lost. So here I've got all the versions. I'm the only one who edited this, but if there were multiple people,
Question.
yes.
If students are working offline, does that affect what's saved or not? Like, because I have some students who are like, I did it, but it's not showing. Like, how does that work with offline?
When they're offline, they have to resync to see the changes to the document. So oftentimes they forget to resync it. Yeah, and that's kind of a tricky thing. I can look for some documentation to send your students. When I put the question form up at the end, if you send me that question, I'll look for documentation for your students.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah. So if there were multiple students, there'd be multiple colors here so you could see who did what. I also find this helpful when I'm grading essays. I go back and look at their revisions to see if I should increase their grade. At my old school, we allowed them to submit essays multiple times to improve their grades. So that revision history can be really popular or helpful. When you click on a different version, it gives you this option up here to restore this version. You can always do that and then go back and revert it to the other one. So it's never permanent, but that's nice if a kid deletes their assignment. Again, you can use voice typing here during comments. So you go to tools and then voice typing. So if you're in your private comment box on Classroom and you want to just speak your comments instead, you can do that. You can also do comments through Screencastify or one of the other recording ones like Loom, and then attach a document. Whatever's getting you to do your comments faster and giving students better feedback, right? I like to add rubrics. As an English teacher, we use a lot of rubrics, but you can definitely use those in other content areas too. If you use the same rubric throughout the year for different assignments, students can see their growth. So that's a really great way to use rubrics. What I would do is I would copy and paste the rubric onto the bottom of the student assignment. I would grade it in one color the first time, and then if they resubmitted it, I would grade it in a second color. And I used yellow the first time and green the second time for every assignment so that students would always know where their grades improved. At my old school, all of our rubrics were out of 20 points, which also made it super quick and easy for getting a final grade and for students to be able to determine their grade themselves. Another quick ease of grading tip is to have student work go at the top of the assignment so that you don't have to waste time scrolling down. I'm sure by now you've realized grading on Google Classroom can be slower than grading a stack of papers that you can just flip through the papers. So whatever we can do to make that faster. I would have students type at the top and then put, whatever text they needed to read at the bottom, just so I wouldn't have to scroll through the text to get to their answers. Some things to consider are UDL, which is Universal Design of Learning. Oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I've been studying this so much. Okay, so UDL basically means how usable are your documents for students to get the most out of it. There's a link here for the UDL website. There's also a link to the APS Special Education website. Both are excellent resources to learn more about UDL and how to best support our learners who don't all learn in the same way. But some things to think about are that you want to provide multiple means of engagement for students, meaning that they have individual choice. We're teaching them autonomy, that we're continuing to foster collaboration and community. You can have students self-assess and reflect. Have them grade themselves on the rubric before you grade them. That's a great way for them to self-assess. You're giving them multiple means of representation. So you can actually customize the display of auditory and visual information. Google has a lot of that built in. We also have tools such as Snap and Read and Co-Writer that help with that. You can help illustrate through multimedia so that they have different ways to learn the knowledge. And then you can use things like tables and the organization of your document to guide them through the information processing, so that there's a hierarchy, which things need to be done first, which things are more important. And then you can provide multiple means of action and expression. Vary your methods for responses so that students have a chance to write responses, speak responses, draw, do short stories and narratives, as well as written responses that are more nonfiction. Give them graduated levels of support for practice and performance. Using docs, you can use the tools that are here to give them more support at the beginning of the school year, or for lower level students, and then gradually take away those supports as they get stronger, that scaffolding. And you can teach students, you can support the planning and strategy development. So things like using tables to create checklists so that they can strategize and plan how they're going to complete the assignments. This is a great visualization of some examples of universal design for learning. So you can represent through video, sound, use closed captioning on videos for our students who need to read it, using books, magazines, presentations, and graphs. Some expression, you can use drawing software. Whiteboard.chat is a great tool for students to use to draw. It's like Jamboard, but even better, and it's free for everybody. Typing essays, acting out, using posters, creating drawings or graphic organizers, and then using assistive technologies such as Co-Writer and Snap and Read. And then engagement. What choices are we giving them? Are we giving them games? Are they doing collaboration? Are they doing self-reflection? Are we including music or audio for routines? This is great for the littles who definitely need those routines. And then real life examples and taking pictures. That's another great way to engage our readers, or our students. So this is there's a lot of information here, but this is a table about how we can scaffold learning using a variety of Google tools, and then what that formative assessment might look like. And then there's a link here to a whole website dedicated to using Google tools to help you with UDL. So I've got a lot here. I don't want to go into all of it because I want to save time for Google Drawings, but just consider, how am I helping my students? How am I scaffolding it so that the lower level students and the higher level students are able to get the most they can out of my assignments? Here's an example. I've linked an essay from a 9th grade SE student and a 9th grade gifted student. I had an argument unit where students would write essays about who was the best and who was the worst cartoon villains. So they would practice their argumentation skills. As part of their evidence, they had to actually quote the movie. So they had to find scripts, and then they could use pictures as evidence. So this was a great way to engage students in writing real essays. They were organized, they had thesis statements, they had to use evidence, they had to use a rebuttal and a counterclaim, but they got to talk about a topic that they knew well. So I have these essays linked. My gifted student wrote about Mother Gothel from Rapunzel, or Tangled, I guess. And so you can see her whole essay here. She even quotes the movie correctly. I would allow them to use all caps for emphasis. That's also something fun. And then at the bottom here, I have her rubric, so she could see what her score was as soon as I was done grading it. My SE student did the same thing, same assignment. He wrote about Gru, or not Gru. Gru turns out to be the good guy. The guy, Vector from Despicable Me. And so, you can have students use multimodal learning in their showing of their knowledge, as well as their as well as you teaching them that. Okay. Citing sources, you can actually have students cite their sources directly from the Google Doc. You go to Tools and then Explore. You type it in, and then you can actually cite it in MLA, APA, or Chicago. I don't know who uses Chicago, but that's a great way to teach them to cite their sources very quickly. There's a link to that here. You can add GIFs. So instead of just adding a flat picture, you can actually add an animated picture. Kids love that. It makes it a little bit more fun. You can actually create your own GIFs using Screencastify. So if you want to just show them the steps of directions and then copy and paste it in. And if you don't know about the Explore tool, Google has this on all of their resources. It's this little tiny box down here at the bottom. It's also under Tools and then Explore. But when you pull that open, it pulls information from your document that it thinks that you might find interesting. You can also do a Google search right here in your document. So use that Explore tool to see what's out there and find some really fun stuff. All right, last thing is Google Drawings. I love Google Drawings. It is an integrated, app to Google Docs. So there's no additional website, but you can start a drawing on its own from your Drive, or you can start a drawing from your doc. They're great for showing your work if you wanted to show students the steps in like a math problem, to create a quick graphic organizer, create a quick diagram. Students can use Google Drawings to create posters. It's super fun and easy. So what you do is when you're on your document, you go to Insert, Drawing. If you have one saved, you can insert it from your Drive. You can also just start a new one. Then you can free write. The free write tool is not great here. It's better if you open up a separate drawing. Oh, I don't want curved. I want scribble. The scribble's the writing one. So let's say I wanted to show them the steps in a problem. So I could show them, see, it's not great. Why isn't it showing up? You can also include an image and then circle it or highlight it or whatever. You can do the Google image search directly from here. I like this for your math work because you do have a lot. Oops, it still managed to find it even though I spelled it wrong. There's a lot of like math diagrams that you could include, and then you select it and then you can draw directly on top of it. So if you wanted to, tell your students to make a quick graph, they could make a quick graph and then you could graph that equation. When you save it, it automatically shows up on your document, and then you can, just like any other image, increase or decrease the size or double click on it to edit it. So just to show you some examples, and I would love to do more training with Google Drawings for anybody who's interested. You can also just start a brand new drawing by going to your file, then new, then drawing, and then you have all of the tools available because there's a lot more tools if you use it on its own. But I have some examples created by students. This is a poster that a student created. We were doing, what's it called? I've lost my words. A false dichotomy is it'll come to me later, of course. But they use color, they use images, they use words to convey their ideas. This was a yearbook spread. I taught a yearbook elective class to 7th and 8th graders. So an 8th grader created this gorgeous spread about Balloon Fiesta. This class took a full month, but by the end of that month, this elective class that I taught, they had 16-page books that they created all themselves using Google Drawings. You can do graphic organizers. This is an infographic that I created for one of my classes. And then how beautiful is this? This is a yearbook that a senior created. So you can literally do an entire design class using Google Drawings. Please reach out to me if you would like any more support on Google Drawings. We don't have a whole lot for it. It's not super well known, but it's an amazing tool. So I hope that if you're interested, you start exploring and reach out to me if you have any questions.